Hi, welcome to Right to Top. I'm Adam. In today's video, I want to talk to you about phrasal verbs. Now, phrasal verbs are the combination of a verb and a preposition, and the combination, when you put the two words together, gives you a completely different meaning and sometimes different meanings. Okay, there's more than one meaning to each phrasal verb. Now, the reason I want to discuss this is because in my last video, I told you how to build vocabulary. You can watch the video, there's a link here to watch it. And I told you that you should use the uncommon uses of everyday words. And I gave the example of pan, the word pan, P-A-N, and the phrasal verb to pan out. To pan out means to happen according to plan or to happen successfully. Now, in the comment section, I got a comment that said, well, my teachers always said never to use phrasal verbs or idioms in academic writing. So today I want to make sure that I clear this up because I get that comment actually quite often. And I want to tell you that you can use phrasal verbs in your academic writing and you should use phrasal verbs in your academic writing. Now, was this person's teacher wrong? Yes and no. There are good phrasal verbs to use in academic writing, and there are bad phrasal verbs to use in academic writing. So I'm going to walk you through a few of these. I'm going to show you why it is okay to use them. I'm going to give you an example of a good one and a bad one, and then I'm going to give you 10 good phrasal verbs to use in your academic writing. Okay, let's start. This is the writing rubric for the TOEFL. This shows you how they score it. This is the public rubric. I will put the link in the description box so you can go see this in full if you like. Look at number 5, okay? An essay at this level largely accomplishes all of the following. They talk about topic, this and that. Look at the last one. Displays consistent facility in the use of language, demonstrating syntactic variety, meaning putting words together, putting sentences together, appropriate word choice, and idiomaticity. Difficult word, though it might have minor lexical errors. Idiomaticity, they want to see collocations, phrasal verbs, idioms even. Again, they want you to make sure that it's the appropriate phrasal verb, not slang, not casual, not informal. Formal phrasal verbs, and again, I'm going to show you examples of what these are, okay? IELTS. If you're looking at the IELTS essay for band 9, look at the lexical resource. This is their vocabulary, what they're grading on. Uses a wide range of vocabulary. So not just words, collocations, phrasal verbs, with very natural and sophisticated control of lexical features. Means you can do all kinds of things with your word choices, including phrasal verbs. Minor errors may occur. Look at the second one for the 8th band. Skillfully uses uncommon lexical items. Phrasal verbs are not that common. People are afraid to use them. But there may be occasional inaccuracies in word choice and collocation. Now, what is a collocation? A collocation is the arrangement of words together. Certain words just naturally go together. For example, do homework. You always do your homework. You don't make your homework. You don't take your homework. You don't do something else with your homework. Do homework. That's a collocation. Phrasal verbs are technically collocations. They are combining 2, sometimes 3 words that naturally go together and work together as a one whole unit to express an idea or express a meaning. Okay? Now, let's look at an example of a good phrasal verb and a bad phrasal verb. Here's an example question. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages of having a pet as you're growing up. The advantages you want to discuss are to learn responsibility and to learn how to cope with death. When you have a pet, your pet dies, you're still a child, you learn how to deal with death, how to mourn, and then when it happens as an adult with family members or friends, you're a little bit better prepared for it. So let's look at the sentence. By having experienced the death of a pet, children might be better able to process the emotions involved when someone close to them passes away. Pass away means die. Now, this is actually better than better able to process the emotions involved when someone close to them dies. Now, is dies bad? Is it bad to use the verb die? No. It's the correct verb. It's fine. It's simple. Everybody knows this word. Everybody uses this word. It's an everyday word. You hear it on the news every day. So what's wrong with it? Nothing. It's simple. You won't lose any points for using the word die. but you also won't gain any points. If you use pass away, it shows that A, you have a range, you have more vocabulary to choose from. B, you know uncommon expressions, you know collocations, phrasal verbs, idioms. You know how to have your language is a bit more rich, let's put it this way, okay? But if you said better able to process the emotions involved when someone close to them checks out. Check out, I think you know from hotel, when you leave the hotel, you check out. Well, when you leave life, you also check out. But this is slang. This phrasal verb you absolutely should not use in your academic writing. Pass away, good. Check out, bad. So when a teacher tells you don't use phrasal verbs, they're talking about the check out examples, I hope. If they're talking about pass away, well, you know, take them with a grain of salt. They should know better than to tell you not to use it. It's okay to use it. So, having said all that, I'm going to give you 10 phrasal verbs that you should, if you can, if it's appropriate for the context, you should use in your academic writing. Call for. Now, call for, very simple. Call for something, right? When you call for something, you're making a demand, or you're saying that there's a requirement, something requires a certain situation. Reforms, an investigation, patience. This situation calls for patience. We shouldn't rush through the decision-making process, okay? So this situation calls for calm deliberation and a swift but effective result. So this situation requires, okay, or demands. Both of these would be okay as a replacement. But calls for, nothing wrong with using this phrasal verb in your academic writing. It's actually better that you do. The judge called for order after the crowd in the courtroom erupted in angry reaction to the verdict. So you've all seen these movies, like there's a courtroom and the jury says guilty, not guilty, and everybody starts screaming and yelling, and the judge with his gavel, you know, or her gavel, and he's hitting, and he's calling for order. Order. So call for, demand. He's making a demand for order, okay? Next, carry out. I've actually discussed this one in a different video, but carry out is a very common phrasal verb. It means do, essentially. So instead of using the verb do, which is very basic, very everyday, verb, use a different one. Use conduct, or use a phrasal verb, carry out, an experiment, an investigation, carry out justice, okay? Make it happen. Scientists who carry out controversial research are often criticized in the media. So scientists who do this research are often criticized. When governments prevent reporters from carrying out their journalistic duties, society as a whole loses. From doing, from conducting, okay, from making it happen. So carry out, good phrasal verb, everyday usage actually is very common. Okay for academic writing, use it. Account for, this one is not used enough. This is a very good phrasal verb and has so many different uses. To make up means to comprise or be a part of something. To explain, to consider. When you're making considerations, when you're thinking about something, make sure to account for all the different things you need to. Make up accounts for half the population. So the African American community in this state accounts for 5% of the electorate. Okay, it makes up 5%. The fluctuation, variables, etc. Just as a side note, this is not. This is also a phrasal verb, but it's more of a collocation. Take into account. To take into account means to consider. Okay, when you're making decisions, don't forget to take into account all these certain aspects of it. Okay, these economic forecasts also try to account for variables such as unforeseen natural disasters that can heavily burden the budget. So the forecast, when they're making prediction or guessing the future economy, they're trying to consider in their calculations these events like earthquakes, tornadoes, etc. How much these will cost the government to fix. The police grew even more suspicious when the suspect could not account for his whereabouts on the night of the crime. So the police are asking this guy, where were you that night of the murder? And he says, I don't know. So he couldn't account for his whereabouts. He couldn't explain where he was on that night. Okay, account for, explain. If you can use account for correctly, it stands out in the grader's mind. It shows that you have a good grasp and a good range of vocabulary. To phase in or phase out. To phase in or phase out means to introduce, phase in, or eliminate, phase out something in stages. For example, changes or policy or a system, new system, you don't want to just suddenly change everything. You want to phase it in. You want to do a little bit each time so people can get used to it, right? So changes of this magnitude should not be implemented all at once, but rather phased in to allow the staff to adjust accordingly. So every week, a little change. Every month, a little change. That way, over 6 months, you've completely changed the system, but you've done it in phases, in stages, so that everybody can adjust to each new part of the system, of the new system. The bonus system will be phased out over the next 5 years to reflect the reality of increasing costs. So the bonus system, at the end of the year, employees get a bonus. They get a bunch of money as a bonus, but the company's costs are going up, so they need to cut back on spending. So they will get rid of the bonus system. But they're not going to do it like next year there's no bonus, because for a lot of people that's a bit of a shock. So next year the bonus will be 20% less. The following year it'll be 30% less. 3 years later it'll be 75% less, and the fourth year it'll be gone, right? So it's phased out over 5 years, over a span of time. Good phrasal verb, use it in your academic essay. Okay, let's point out. Let's go to the next one, point out. Draw attention to something. So to point out, basically you're pointing at. It's actually a bit more direct, but it's still a phrasal verb. It's verb and preposition out. To point something out means to make sure that the listener or the reader puts their attention to it, right? So you're focusing on it. While considering socioeconomic background as a crucial factor in voters' decision making, it is important to point out that it is not the only major factor. So basically, if you're writing an academic essay, you're saying like, this is very important, but it's important to point out. It's important for me as the author to point out to you as the reader that it's not the only major factor. And then I will go on to talk about these other factors as well, right? So don't think that there's only one. Here, make sure you understand there are other factors as well. Point out, good phrasal verb. Follow up, okay? To take further action. You do something and then you follow it up with another action. Applicants are advised to follow up their interviews with a quick thank you email. So if you go for a job interview, you have your meeting, you discuss everything, seems good, you leave, you have a good feeling, follow it up. Make sure that you send that interviewer a thank you letter for their time, for their consideration. It shows a bit of professionalism. But it could be used with any situation. Follow up can be used with many situations, right? So I took a test, I passed, so I'm going to follow that up with my application to university. Because I did so well, I'm ready to take the next step. Okay? Put forward means present something, like an argument or a proposal, or to express something. Proponents of legalizing cannabis, use is a noun here, often put forward the argument that doing this will benefit society by ridding it of gangs and the black market. So proponents of legalizing cannabis, so people who are for legalizing it, often argue that. I can say often argue that doing this, that's one way. But again, you want to show them a bit of range. Often put forward the argument. They present the argument. They make the argument. They express the argument, okay? That's another way. Resort to. This is a very, very good phrasal verb, and I never see anybody using it. It's a very good one to use. When you resort to, you make use of something as the last option. Okay, when you have no more options, you will resort to the one that you didn't want to use. Okay, usually it's something bad like violence or cheating, etc. After repeated attempts to effect change through peaceful protest, it is understandable that certain individuals might resort to violence to be heard. So they try to be peaceful, they try to demonstrate, they try to write letters, they try to go to the media. Nothing worked. Finally, they have no choice. They'll have only one last option to use, and that is violence. And so they're going to use that. They're going to resort to violence to be heard. Very good phrasal verb, very good in academic writing. Try to use it if you can. Rule out. To rule out means to exclude from consideration. Don't even think about it, okay? An action, idea, etc. Many Western medical professionals rule out the benefits of Eastern traditional treatments without even giving them the benefit of the doubt or conducting some research. Sorry, I'm missing a word there, them. So they rule it out. Sometimes there's also an idiom, rule out of hand. Basically, don't even think about it, don't even consider, just, no, it doesn't work. Well, do some research, find out, talk to some people, see if it works, then decide if it works or not. But if you rule it out of hand or rule it out completely, not very good for you as a doctor. Military planners will usually rule out offensive actions if they consider the human toll to be too high. Again, two should be two O's there. Rule out. So you have soldiers, they're going to attack a village, but they understand if they attack, thousands of people will die. So what they might do, they will rule it out. They say, no, we're not going to attack. We're going to wait until the enemy comes out and then deal with them out here. So they rule out offensive action. They don't even think about it. Too many people will die. Human toll means the number of people who will die or get hurt. Take on, okay? When you take something on, or when you take on a task, etc., a challenge, a project, you accept it. It means you challenge yourself, you're going to do it. Not everyone is suited to helping others. So those who take on philanthropic projects should think carefully before committing to such work. So before you accept or before you promise to engage in something, make sure you're ready to commit. Okay, if you're not, don't. Philanthropy or philanthropic projects, helping other human beings. Okay, being generous to other human beings. Now, here are a few informal ones. These phrasal verbs don't use in your academic essays. Get by. Get by means just do the minimum to succeed or to survive or whatever. Figure out, don't say figure out, just say understand. Ask out, like for example, ask out on a date. You're not going to ask somebody out on a date in an academic essay, but ask out, you can say, if you are talking about like growing up, for example, young people might be timid about asking each other out on dates, so might be timid about proposing a date, etc. Do over means repeat. So say repeat, don't say do over. Freak out. When you walk into my parents' room, I say, oh, Mom, Dad, don't freak out, but I crashed the car. Okay, it means don't get angry. Don't use freak out in your academic essays. They're too casual, too informal. Okay, stick to the formal ones and you'll get the points. Okay, and that's it. I hope these are helpful phrasal verbs. There are more. Do a Google search or a Bing search or whatever search. Look for phrasal verbs for academic writing and you'll see a bunch more. And I'll make another video or a few more videos about idioms and phrasal verbs and collocations and all that other good stuff, okay? I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please ask me below in YouTube. Please press the like button if you like the video. Please subscribe to my channel and come back for more videos to help you write better academic English. See you again.